Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Diehl, and this morning's show, we're going to talk about how COVID-19 is impacting Iowa's economy. And we have a little bit of a different format this morning in light of our topic, COVID-19. And my guests are joining me from their homes and possibly their businesses this morning. And so I want to welcome them in here. And so I want each of you, if you don't mind, just take maybe 30 seconds or so to introduce yourself. Talk to us about why Iowa's economy is important to you. And then we'll go from there. So I guess we can start with Ron. Ron, do you want to kick us off with an intro?
Sure. Thank you, Alan. Privileged to be on with you today and the other guest. My name is Ron Corbett. I work at the Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. We have a long name, but our mission is economic development. Our legacy organizations are a Chamber of Commerce. So we represent the business community and advocate on behalf of the business community. And a big part of our role and responsibility is recruiting new businesses to the area, but also helping existing businesses expand and grow and advocate on their behalf. So our mission is economic development, and why we're so interested in the economy, not just of Cedar Rapids, but of the state of Iowa.
Excellent. Thank you, Ron. Monica, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Monica Vernon, and I work at the Czech Village, New Bohemia, Main Street District, another mouthful. Mostly we work with the two historic neighborhoods of Czech Village and New Bohemia with small business. We have two historic neighborhoods that make up one district, and it's historic, it's charming. And we have 200 entities, organizations we work with. Most of them are small businesses, one of a kind. And the economy is really important to every single one of these people. It's, of course, it is to all of us, but for them, it's kind of the heartbeat of Cedar Rapids, because every little thing and every big thing really affects them. And so we are working very hard to make sure that we can keep people in business and even continue to launch businesses at this time. And I think we've had 11 new businesses join us during the COVID-19, and everyone, we've had a few move on, but most of our businesses are surviving. We just work hard to see that they thrive.
Excellent. Thank you, Monica. And David.
Hi, my name is David Frisvold. I'm an associate professor of economics at the University of Iowa and the director of social and education policy research at the Public Policy Center at the university. The areas that I work on are health economics and the economics of education. And my work focuses on a variety of different levels on public policy and economic policy related to local, state, and national issues. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate all three of you being here. And of course, like I say, we're in our homes, and that presents its own unique set of challenges. I'm hoping my dog isn't too loud, but we'll make it work. So, Ron, I wanted to start with you. I think that the Guarantee Bank block development that some are familiar with downtown Cedar Rapids, which is a chain of, we're basically a hotel that's looking to renovate and build out a significant hotel chain there at the Guarantee Bank block area currently. I know that went on hold in March due to COVID concerns and the concerns the developer had. But we found out recently, unless there's been a change since then, that might be back on. And that to me is a great kind of example of how COVID has just kind of initially caused havoc, right, to our economy. But as we see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel and we see our economy recovering, but could you kind of talk about what your view is of that? And do you feel that these kind of venues, namely a hotel, are going to recover and that there is going to be demand for those as the fear of COVID kind of decreases?
Well, I think initially that's how you framed it up. This event of COVID really created a lot of uncertainty in not just the business community, but all around the world. And businesses like clarity and predictability. So as the virus started to spread and the confusion and the uncertainty really took root along with fear, that project was put on hold. The Guarantee Bank building has been owned by the Becker family for many, many years, a locally owned bank. And when Mr. Becker passed away, the family sold that bank building to Cedar Rapids Bank and Trust. And they have a large presence in the area, but their physical building is right there on First Avenue, not too far from the Guarantee Bank building. And they really didn't need two locations right next to each other. So they put that property on the market, not knowing what developer would come forward and what plan they may have. Some people thought it could be converted to housing. Some people had other ideas, but Heart of America Hotels and Hospitality out of Davenport, Rock Island area, Mike Whalen, put in a bid to restore that bank building and turned into a boutique hotel. In addition, he was going to build a brand new hotel adjacent to the Guarantee Bank building where the old World Theater was located on some of the vacant property. And this is going to be a $50+ million renovation plus new project. And as you said, it was put on hold. But as we're starting to recover, and people can debate whether it's a Super V or a V or a Nike swoosh, everyone believes we will rebound at some point in time, some areas faster than others, that the developer is now feeling a little more comfortable about the project and would like to see it still happen for our community, but just not in the same timeline that was originally envisioned.
Yeah, and I know I read something recently about how, you know, there is a trend away from kind of urban living because of kind of close proximity that people are in there, and kind of a demand for those suburban neighborhoods, larger homes, et cetera. And I know Monica and Ron, you're obviously close to this in Cedar Rapids and have a vested interest there. And David, you kind of a nice macro view of this. Do we see this as a significant trend that we will see kind of an emptying, if you will, moving from those downtown dwellings, or do we see that that's really just a short-term phenomena? And David, feel free, and I'll direct that to you. Feel free. What's your take on it? Do you think that's a kind of societal trend there, an economic trend?
Well, so I mean, we've been seeing that, I guess, throughout the 80s and 90s. The movement towards the suburbs, and then recently there's been a movement more towards urbanization. It's tough to predict. My guess, though, is that what we're seeing is maybe a little bit of a blip in that, but that will continue. I think that some of the building, that the long-term planning for the buildings that have been taking place is going to continue. And what you're going to see is that people are still interested in moving towards downtown areas and the downtown amenities. My guess is that that's going to return in a couple of years.
Yeah, and that speaks well for you, Ron, and that project there, and just for our downtowns generally. So that's, to me, that's.
And I would concur. And just recently, it was announced that the property on First Avenue and First Street over in the Kingston Village area, most people know that property as where the proposed casino was going to be planned for 7 to 8 years ago. That didn't come to fruition. I mean, the property's been sitting vacant. Some developers teamed up, local developers from Cedar Rapids, along with Iowa City, to redevelop that property, and 80% of that redevelopment is housing. And so we've seen new development, we've seen building conversions, and certainly Monica can speak to this. She's seen a lot of new development in the NewBo in the Czech Village area, apartments. So I concur with the professor. There's still going to be a demand for urban living. I think most of the stress is going to be on businesses that have a lot of people working, say like UFG or Great America Leasing, True North, Hibu, some of the downtown law firms where now their employees are getting used to working from home. That's the stress that's going to be put on is the commercial property, not so much the residential.
I want you to be able to jump in here next. But, you know, as I was thinking through this, and I, you know, with the company I work for, I'm also working from home and have been for some time. And I'm definitely one that I didn't envision myself getting comfortable working from home, but certainly have. And our company is, you know, looking at it as a viable long-term strategy. But do we see that then as a concern? Let's say if a company has a large footprint in our community, and then they decide, hey, you know, this is real estate we don't need. Is there a hit to our tax revenue? That would be a concern there. And how do you mitigate for that? And Monica, I'd actually like to direct that to you.
Sure. You know, I think that it goes both ways. So certainly we have seen this where people are very comfortable working from home, and but that also means anybody can come from anywhere and live here. So I think when we talk about the flight from the urban areas, we have two daughters who were living in New York City, and they ended up both in California for completely different reasons, but so many of their friends were looking for ways to get out of the city. We're not urban like New York. You know, we're the best of both worlds. So you can live in downtown Cedar Rapids, and you know, it's the best of everything. It's living in NewBo or Czech Village or right downtown, as Ron was talking about, access to trails. You can eat outside just about anywhere. So I really think that that this trend toward living downtown and using the core area of our community, I think it's just going to continue. I know that Ron and I served on city council with a guy who was looking at how you could retrofit the buildings downtown for housing. So I think that that's also possible. You know, if a big law firm ends up everybody working from home, how do you retrofit that to housing? And I think in lots of cases it's possible. So
yeah,
you know,
that's an excellent point, right? That you're going to see these potentially, right? See these buildings repurposed from what were typically just a corporation or a company that has commercial space there to now to residential. So that's very interesting. And I love your point about now there to be more flexibility as our work from home technology increases, gives people flexibility to move around the country, find maybe a quality of living that they wouldn't find in maybe some other urban areas, or as I've been reading out in California, right? People fleeing the West Coast because of just the continuous fires there. So of course that's a whole other subject, right? About how our climate is kind of reshaping how people live and where they live. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. Now, I did want to shift maybe a little bit here to talk about our job situation here in our employment situation in Iowa. Our current unemployment rate is a little over 6%, which is roughly 2% less than the national average. So that's great news, and it's continuing to trend down. I was reading here where Beth Townsend, she's the director of the Iowa Workforce Development, said right now there's actually 60,000 jobs at iowaworks.gov. And that employers are, quote, desperately looking for a skilled workforce. I think an emphasis on skilled there. What do you attribute the reason to finding, or why is it difficult to find a skilled workforce in Iowa right now? I've certainly heard different theories on it. What's your idea there? And then more importantly, how do we engage the unemployed, and how do we develop a skilled workforce?
Sure, we have seen our unemployment rate rebound, go lower, I guess. It jumped up to 12.5% here in Linn County. That was like the highest level that we've seen probably since the farm crisis. And as you said, statewide, it's down to 6%. One of the reasons that we probably recovered a little faster is we still have an underlying demographic problem in our state. We just don't have as many people moving into Iowa as we need for economic growth. So that's, one challenge, and that's also coupled with an aging workforce. So we're starting to see more and more people retire. Some recent data that I've seen and looked at, and others are looking at too, is the labor participation rate. People that are maybe on the bubble for retirement, that, I'll hang on for another year or two, or maybe their employer, said, well, work for another year or two. And then we saw some early retirements that were given by companies. That was the trigger point for them to finally retire. I worry that some of those people won't come back in to the labor market, and they're retired. Maybe they shouldn't. So we have some underlying issues that our state needs to address from a workforce standpoint, just from a sheer people standpoint, a number of people, math issues, and then in addition to that skilled effort, and why we continue to push for internships, job shadows, shared work. Getting kids that are graduating from high school and going into college, knowing the companies in our region that are hiring and careers that they offer.
Yes, excellent. Does Monica or?
Well, I was going to say, so much of this also is, since you can live anywhere, and if I were still a adjunct professor I was with the entrepreneurial program at Iowa, but if you just think to the 4 Ps, product, price, place, promotion, this is all about place. You can live anywhere. And when you think about that, we have to make sure we set the table to get people to come to Iowa. So if we only think about the job and job training, and when we're down to 6% unemployment, a lot of those people are not going to be able to be ready for those skills. We want to train as many of them as we can, but we need to entice people to come here where it's easy button, and where we have developed a good biking culture, and where you can live downtown very safely, and we have a beautiful river, once we tame it. But they're looking for, what will my life be like? You can live in San Francisco and pay $2 million for a house that you can get for, $150,000 in the heart of Cedar Rapids, near one of our neighborhoods, or in one of our Czech Village or NewBo neighborhoods. So I think we have to kind of look at this challenge in a different way. We have to offer them what their life can be like, what their family's life can be like, and they can work from anywhere, so they can bring stuff with them here. So I think it is, yes, it's a workforce issue, but it might be a quality of life issue as well.
David, do you have anything to add there on that?
Sure. I guess I would say, a few things about the labor market. One, I guess recent estimates put it as about a little more than a third of the labor force can work entirely from home. So, a lot of the majority of people are still either working a mixture of home and at their place of employment, or completely at their place of employment. And so, we can think of a variety of different types of settings for which people are working. Iowa does have a low unemployment rate. It is important to keep track of the labor force participation rate as well, as Ron mentioned. And a few things that Iowa can do to, reduce the unemployment rate and improve the economic conditions would be investments in education, right? So Iowa was the leader in the high school movement throughout most of the 20th century. And that's, I think, been a big reason for the success of the state. And so, investing in K-12 education, community colleges, and the universities have helped the state to be successful.
Very good. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about how in this may be a bit controversial, but that's what this show's about, right? COVID-19 and certainly our response to it, and how we get our economy going again, and certainly there are arguments that we have. how do we kind of, mitigate for it? Certainly, if we look back 100 years ago and we look at the Spanish flu that kind of ravaged our country and the world at that time, one of the interesting things about it is that people really had no choice when it came to going to work or going to school, especially going to work. They either starved to death or they went to work. So a lot of people went to work and took risks, and a lot of people died. In fact, in today's numbers, it would be almost 2 million people in the U.S. But if you look at it from an economic perspective, really the impact on our economy was very minimal. And again, in part because people just did go to work and kept things moving. It seems as if today we have a lot more options when it comes to working from home, when it comes to kind of our social safety net. And that's where what I want to focus on there, and maybe go back to you, David, on this one, is how strong is the safety net that we have in our economically? Do we have the ability to continue to, print money, go into debt, et cetera, that, to help people that may otherwise be unemployed or not able to go to work or have additional expenses? How sustainable is the strategy that we've employed so far, or do we need to, seriously consider other strategies? Again, a large question, but feel free to kind of take it in the direction you'd like, David.
Sure. So, I guess a few things related to that. One, with the comparison to 1918, there's certainly a much more robust social safety net than there was then. So many of the programs that were launched in the mid 60s, just weren't available at that time. And many other programs, Social Security, things like that, were launched after 1918. So all of those are helpful in terms of, I guess, buffering the negative impact of COVID. Think of unemployment insurance. I think a few things that come out of this. One is the importance of public health as an aspect of economic policy, right? So, we can focus on and debate whether or not a short-term cut in the payroll tax is more effective than an unconditional check. But I think really what it comes down to is these are going to be short-term measures to try to reduce the negative effects of basically stalling economic activity for a few months, and large reductions in economic growth, household incomes, large increases in unemployment. And so, the most effective way forward is through public health investments, because then people can get back to working, people can get back to producing, it's easier to go to school. And so that's where things like the vaccine development has been so important in the US and throughout the world. The rapid production of vaccines in anticipation of approval, my guess is that's going to end up being quite helpful in terms of speeding the time through which regular individuals are able to get the vaccine. Once it is approved, and other public health measures can just help it so that individuals can go out their lives in terms of working, getting back to education. And so, I think it was a broad question, and so I guess I'd throw those few points out. So we do have a social safety net that is helpful. It's mitigating some of the negative effects. You want to minimize the negative effects that individuals are feeling, though, and that there are a lot of individuals that are struggling right now, and so it's not the case that the social safety net is completely netting out all of those negative effects, but it is helping, and public health infrastructure is going to be very crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And Absolutely. And Ron and Monica, I think we only have a few minutes left here, and I want to kind of talk about, what the future might look like for Iowa. And again, as I think inevitably, bring our economy back online, right, and maybe return to a new normal, if you will. What can Iowa do? You can talk about Cedar Rapids, our community here. How can we best position ourselves as, resources are pushed in different directions, right, because of a demand for different services and technologies and products, et cetera. But what can we do to best position ourselves to kind of to be there for this new world, right, and give people what they need?
Well, one thing I think we need is to be able to adapt, and businesses have to adapt. Local governments are going to have to adapt. Really, the big unknown is consumers. I mean, us as consumers, we get into habits. That was one of the big fears after the flood of 2008 and even the scare of 2016 is once people get out of their habits of going to a certain restaurant, they can't go there anymore. Then when they're able to go, they have new habits and stuff. So I really am concerned about the general consumer viewpoint of things, and they're going to look heavily on the safety side. From the business standpoint, we've already seen one expansion project in Cedar Rapids that was related to supply chain. Everybody talked internationally about how the supply chain was being interrupted because of COVID, and that may provide opportunities or not for communities. One expansion, a $15 million expansion, is based because the company is adjusting their supply chain. That's going to create 18 new jobs in the community, high-paying jobs for someone to have an opportunity to work and have a good lifestyle. So I think the adaptability issue is just something that we have to recognize.
Yeah, I also I think that as much as we talk about clearly safety is a key thing, and so many people dressing more casually. I think we've all done that. Being at home more. I really loved being around my house a little bit more, and I do go back and forth between my working down in Czech Village and NewBo. But I also think that when you are alone more, and when you are doing things online, or you pick up a dinner to go because you're not going to eat it in the restaurant, I think that we need to remember here in Iowa that when people do have an interaction with a human being, and when we come out of COVID, I think that it's going to be changed forever in that, we when you do have an interaction with a human, it needs to be extremely good. So even though people are buying their clothes and their groceries and lots of things online, when they do go to a store, it's going to be even more important for the friendliness, for the helpfulness, for the knowledgeable salesperson, or whatever experience it is, that we're really there for them. And I think Iowans, we have a real advantage on that. During the trade show, they kept saying, "You guys are so friendly." And I thought, 13 days without power, I was getting a little bit to the end of my rope, and the guy said I was one of the most friendly people he'd ever met. So I think we do have that going for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was 14 days without power. I got to know my neighbors very well, so that was great. And so I know we're really down here to the last few seconds of the show, and of course time races here as it does usually. So I do want to just kind of close out by saying I appreciate each one of you. Certainly, each one of you has played a key role in our community here. Ron is obviously the prior mayor of Cedar Rapids and saw us through a lot of difficulties there, and certainly was a tribute to our success as a community there for many years. And Monica, of course, your involvement and Dave there at the university. So I do want to thank each and every one of you for making this show hopefully a success and informative for people that are viewing it. And again, thank you for joining us today, and hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Take care now. Bye.
Thank you.